for an additional minute or two for people to join. I still don't see our AD on the list. Suppose Ben will be joining. Are all the presenters there? I see there is Marco, there is John. I don't see Joran. So yeah, I guess we're waiting for Joran and Ben to join. And I see Joran, I see Ben, I see Francesca. It seems we are, the critical mass is here. So Stephen, I propose we get started. Yep. So good evening, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. So this is the Lake Working Group meeting at IETF 111. We are already on Thursday, the IETF week, so you should be very familiar with the note 12 that covers this IETF meeting. Notably, if you're aware of any IPR issues that are discussed, you are kindly requested to disclose these during the meeting. And of course, there are different BCPs that cover code of conduct and other important policies of the IETF that cover this meeting. So far, we never had any issues with the code of conduct, and I don't expect that to change with this meeting. So before we jump into the agenda, I would just like to give a brief overview about on the activities since the IETF 110 around the Lake Working Group. In summary, we had 2 interim meetings that were held. 2 interop events. Right now, we are in the state that the main deliverable of this working group, the ad hoc protocol, has been implemented in 7 different implementations that were tested in different ways. Mark will tell us more about that during the interop activity slot. And since IETF 110, we had 3 published versions of the ad hoc draft, with an additional version pending to my understanding. So here you can see the timeline, how the draft evolved since it was adopted in the working group in summer 2020. We have a milestone that we previously agreed upon to attempt to ship the ad hoc draft to ISG by March 2022. This still seems plausible. We will. I would like to discuss this during the next step slots. How the author team sees this deadline. Especially what we need to take into account is the delay for formal verification once we declare the specification in stable enough state. So let me go ahead with the proposed agenda for today. Yes, so this slot covers the Administrivia and Agenda Bash. We have the interop activity overview led by Marco, followed by the ad hoc slot that will be led by Joran and John, covering both the current status, the diffs that were done, the changes that were done since IETF 110, as well as the overview of open issues and how the author team sees the next steps in terms of the specification. Finally, before we conclude the meeting, I would like to discuss, as I said, the next steps in order to plan the activities of the working group after the summer vacation and in the fall. Does anyone want to bash this agenda? I don't hear anyone, so I guess we will be proceeding with this agenda. So there is Joran is in the queue. Yes,
looks fine to me.
It look okay. Thank you. So then I propose I hand it over to Marco. Who is leading the slot on the interop activity So I will stop sharing. Let me see how that works. Stop slide. Yep. Grants. Okay, Marco, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So this is a short recap of the current status for implementations and interops we had recently about the IDOC protocol. And as Malisha mentioned before, I could count 7 available and tested implementations that were lately aligned to version 6 of the draft. So there's RISE implementation in Californium. Timothy provided 2 implementations, one in Python and one in C. And Christian also one in Python building on Timothy's. Peter in C, Stefan also in C, and Lydia from ISIE in Contiki and G. I'm aware also of some more implementations that still have to participate, at least the plenary interop sessions. I'm thinking of Michel Bayet, Michael Richardson, and I learned today actually of one more from INRIA. Malisha, perhaps you want to say some more detail about this one.
Maybe so I can just fill in. This is another implementation that is currently led by INRIA, where we attempt to implement ad hoc in Rust, and more specifically in HackSpec, which is a subset of Rust, with the main goal of formally verifying the C implementation for microcontrollers that was developed by Timothy. So, I mean, this will be a fully featured Rust implementation that can interop, and we expect to participate in the interop tests with this implementation in the fall.
Looking forward. Thanks. So, some point worth noting on 2 of the 7 implementations tested already. The implementation from Ofer also underwent an experimental evaluation, and a paper was published about that with results considering multiple hardware architectures. And Stefan also presented those results at the interim meeting in April. And the implementation in Contiki from Lydia was also run during the interop test over constrained devices, and their local setup considered RPL over an IPv6 mesh network, and it worked pretty fine while interoping over the internet. Since IETF 110, we had a number of bilateral spontaneous tests between implementers, but otherwise we had 2 more official interop events, one in April for version 5 of the draft involving 5 implementations listed here, and the results were reported at the April Lake interim. And then shortly after in May, we had another round of interop tests on version 6 of the draft with these 3 implementations, and results were also reported at the June interim. So overall, at these events, about 10 people participated, considering both the implementers and interested observers. And as usual, we keep collecting results, configurations, and information about these tests in that Google Drive, where we have a spreadsheet detailing which implementations we have supporting what, and which implementation was tested against which other implementation. And for each pair of implementers, we also keep a dedicated Google Docs with more details and raw results, like even console output. Extracting the data we have in that spreadsheet, you can see that we covered a number of configurations. There was one in particular with CypherC2 static authentication and KD credential type that was covered by 3 pairs of interop implementations. Another configuration with CypherC0 sign authentication and X5TS credential type was covered by 2. And many more were covered by 1 implementation pair, not exactly the same one, of course. And so we covered, as a pretty huge range of configurations. And seen from another perspective, we overall considered 6 tested implementation pairs. So it was me against Peter, Stefan, Lydia, and Christian. then Timothy and Christian, and Lydia and Christian. And half of these pairs were actually tested reversing the ad hoc roles among co-op client and co-op server. As a next step, well, now we really have to align our implementations with version 8 of the draft. Here I just quickly list the major things I could identify that require alignment from what it was version 6 or 7. And once that is done, we plan, of course, more tests, I think, during the autumn already. Definitely, we need first to test again what we tested before, so the successful protocol completion and the derivation of a security context for OSCORE. Then it would be good to test something more, I think, like the possible optional use of message 4 and external authorization data, and even better to intentionally trigger some error condition on the ad hoc peers so that error messages are also used. And that's it from my side. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Marco. Do we have any questions regarding the interop activity?
So, Göran here. I just want to add to what you're saying, Marco, on this test activity about different error test cases and also the corner cases and so on. That's something that I'm also highlighting, that we might need some help with setting up that. So we've had that previously with other specifications, sort of a number of good error cases, that's not yet covered. So I think that's good if you highlight that too.
So I guess the target group here are really the developers.
Yes. So we need to think about who's taking the ball there. There's other things related to test vectors. I'll come back to that. It's one of the issues around sort of how we a good format for test vectors, like using JSON and so on. But we'll get back to that.
Okay, sounds good. Do we have any other questions to Marco? If not, I propose we get started with the main agenda item for today, and this is the discussion on the status of the ad hoc draft and the open issues. So we have a consolidated slide deck for these two agenda items. Göran, will you be leading these?
Yeah, I think I can start, and then perhaps John can fit in when necessary.
Okay, sounds good. Okay,
right,
so the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Would you share the slides, or do I that?
You should probably share them yourself. You request
slide it. Share preloaded slides next to the join queue button.
So how's that? Can you see screen?
It works, but it's now you're sharing your screen, I guess. You can also share the uploaded slides. Yeah.
Okay. How do I do that?
The button next to the join queue.
Ask to share the slides.
Oh, perfect. Sorry, I haven't done this before. So now I'm trying to share those.
Yes, there it is. It looks
Oh,
good.
there it works. Perfect. Okay, so let's get started. So this is the status and open issues consolidated slides, as Melissa pointed out. And we like to go through the main changes since last meeting. So we've had a number of interims already, but we'll repeat some of the outcomes from that. We also made some changes after this latest version, and so that we like to present. And then there is a separate text on security levels and design goals. One thing to discuss, and then finally open issues and next steps. So on a high level, these are the changes we made to the message flow. We have removed the correlation factor, and that resulted in the method core field replaced by just the method. There is, we removed the optional connection identifiers from the messages, so we still retain the negotiation of connection identifiers, but the use of them in ad hoc is now deferred to transport. I'll talk more about that in a second. And we have renamed auxiliary data external authorization data because of a confusion with application data. So people thought that these fields were general application data. You could put anything you like. That's not the intent. So that's there is a renaming, and there is also an added clarification to the text. Here is the table of contents after the changes. The method and correlation, since correlation is out, this is replaced by a number of other sections detailing connection identifiers and transport. The auxiliary data, as I mentioned, is being changed. The applicability statement, previously in appendix, is now in section 3, a subsection of section 3. We have also removed the byte string identifier type. I'll talk more about that. And there is now a message processing outline in the in section 5, which ties together the protocol elements in section 3 with the actual message formatting and processing, which comes in as subsections. Section 7 contained the details about transferring ad hoc in co-op and use of OSCORE, and that's now put into Appendix A. And the remaining part of section 7, ad hoc message 4, is put where the other processing messages are processed in section 5. Error handling is also updated now with the different error codes, and then there are some new appendices. So I'll go more into the details in the next couple of slides. As I mentioned, core is removed. And as you remember, core, that was an identifier to signify the correlation of the transport. And the purpose of that was to be able to, so you could compensate for when correlation was not available in co-op, and you could add optional connection identifiers. So there was a lot of issues related to core and related to these optional fields, and that was complicated. And at the end, there was even a proposal to remove it. And then at the end, we actually went for a pull request by Christian, which moved all the complexity out of ad hoc and then specified for the specific transport how to handle it, in this case, co-op. So how co-op uses connection identifiers is very straightforward, and it's easy to describe it there and for particular transport rather than in general with this core parameter. So we're happy with that change. I think that simplified the protocol. In a similar spirit, we have removed the byte string identifier, which was also considered an over-engineering of use of CBOR byte string. So we've replaced it so the connection identifiers can now be either byte strings or CBOR ints. And there is then the complication of which was the reason for introducing this in the first place, is that you need to map connection identifiers to OSCORE sender IDs, which are byte strings, and that needs to be done in a unique way, which avoids collisions. But by introducing this mapping now, so instead of the byte string identifier, we have a mapping from connection identifiers to OSCORE sender IDs. So you could verify what OSCORE sender ID you would get, and you can avoid collisions. So that's how it was handled with connection identifiers. Byte string identifier was also used for key identifier, and that we have addressed by introducing a new COSI header, KID2, of which can have either byte string or inter as value. And there's a separate slide on KID2, so I'll get back to that. Then we have the error message updates. As we discussed already last meeting, with error codes, IANA registration of the codes, and in particular the success code, which is error code 0, which is not transported, but anyway, included. Then when it comes to security processing, there is this change of transcript hash, which was an input from implementers to simplify what you need to store between you have sent the previous value and receive the next. So that sort of takes into account with the definition of the transcript hash. And there is a new application-defined parameter context in the ad hoc exporter. Also feedback from this time from the formal verification guys that pointed out the need for uniqueness in terms of keys, export keys. There are some more details on compact representation of ephemeral public key. So how the Y value is encoded. There are new cipher suites based on SHA-20 poly 1305, also on request. And then there are some changes to normative language, like for failure, whether you must or should send an error. So now it's a recommendation to consider potential denial of service attacks. And there is also whether the sent errors should be a successful request and response or not. That recommendation is removed, so it's neutral. So that was the first half, and here's the second slide on the same topic. So yeah, we also some terminology changes. I already mentioned auxiliary data. There's this protocol instance, which is now called session, to get an harmonized terminology. Quite a few clarifications. So CBOR now always refers to deterministically encoded CBOR. That's quite clear that we wanted, but it wasn't spelled out. There are distinctions between the different uses of the connection identifier for OSCORE and for ad hoc. As I mentioned, that we need the external authorization data requires specification and registration of an AAD type. So it's not any type of application data. EAD4 was only MACed, and now it's encrypted as well. That's on request from an implementer. And a number of other comments by Marco, Malisha, and Peter. So we're very grateful for those. There are 6 new appendices. I already mentioned A. B is on compact representation of elliptic curve points. So as a general text on, for example, when you use Diffie-Hellman. So that's something that can be referenced from other specifications if needed. The CDDL definitions have got one section of their own compiled, that's on request from an implementer. Message deduplication we talked about at last IETF meeting, that this is now completed. There is a description of how to handle transport which does not support message deduplication and without causing a security issue. And G describes transport's not natively provided correlation, where Appendix A is one example, how you do it over CoAP. And then there's a change log appendix as well. There are some new IANA registration, a registry for the exporter label, as mentioned, to get the uniqueness of use of exporter function. There is a registry for error codes, and there is a registry for these external authorization data types. There are requests to register COSI header parameter for CBOR web tokens. or for UCCS, which we come to in the next slide. And there is this KID2 COSI header parameter, updated references, and additional security considerations. So that's about it, what we did in version 8. So unless there are any questions on this particularly, I move on. There is one more slide, and this is what we've done since version 8. Yeah, go ahead.
We have Ben in the queue. Ben, do you want to go ahead?
Yes, I did have a question. So earlier on, you had mentioned that the connection IDs were removed from the ad hoc messages themselves, other than just transporting them, with the idea that the underlying transport would be able to use those. And I was just wondering if we somehow include the connection IDs in the cryptographic bindings to the connection, like so that the result of our crypto ties us to that connection. So it sounds like no. Okay.
Yeah, no, I maybe John wants to fit in here, but my answer would be no. The connection identifiers are negotiated for the purpose of being so that you could make them unique. But when they are used by transport or by someone later, that's sort of up to them. What they need to comply with the security requirements of the application. They don't have a security function in ad hoc.
I think you can see them as the 5-tuple or the port, IP address port number. They're just used to find the context.
Right. So any sort of verification of them would just intrinsically be by the application checking it's getting the data on the connection.
Yeah, and I think the connection, how you look up the connection is also, the processing is better detailed now, but if you have, I think the cryptographic protection was added just because these parameters were a part of ad hoc, and then you're supposed to protect everything that's part of ad hoc. But yeah, if you have any comments on the current draft, we're happy to receive them. But right now they're not protected, and we don't think they need to be protected.
Okay, yeah, I'm glad you thought about it. Thanks.
Thanks for your comment. Another comment? Any other comment?
So, I mean, I had the same question in GitHub while we were discussing this issue. So I guess one thing worth noting is that we are removing the optional connection, the transport of optional connection identifiers from the wire, while the mandatory connection identifiers are still there, and they are included in the transcript cache. Is that correct, Göran?
So yes. So I mean, so the connection identifiers which are negotiated, it's not so easy to see on this figure, but it's the CI in message 1 and CR in message 2. Those are still there, and those are included in the transcript hash. And so those are, the negotiation is secured, but the use of them, which previously was this prepended, that's removed because they were basically used for lookup. I think that, I mean, it's a good discussion. We have thought about it, but we might have thought wrong. So please check it out and see if you agree with the.
Yeah. So maybe we should point Ben to the GitHub discussions of the relevant issues.
That's a good point.
Okay.
Would you like to do that, Malisha? Do you have them, or should I do it?
I'm looking for them in GitHub right now. Yeah, I can do that.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay. Any other comment on the late changes? Then we go to the very late changes, which is what happened after submission. We wanted to fit this in as well because we think the issue is from a working group point of view, we have discussed this, so we think we have resolved it, but we didn't have time to put it into the draft before submission deadline. So, but now there is this part as well, which is dealing with how to handle raw public keys by value and the format of CredX. And this was based on a discussion in an interim where we got well, basically we had a number of proposals for how to identify, and Karsten pointed us out to this work on unprotected CVT claim sets. So there is something called an unprotected CVT claim set. CWT is the CBOR web token, and if you just take out the COSIV wrapping, you get the unprotected claims, which is a map, CBOR map. And that is actually a very natural format for defining raw public keys. So that's what we're using, and we have added in section 3.5 the analogous use cases to using CWTs instead of certificates. We also replaced the example with the credential was for a raw public key with the credential of a UCCS. So that's the picture on the right here, where you see there is this claims for subject. Claims for subject number 2 here can use to specify an identity, and the confirmation claim has a subclaim COSI key, which we could use to carry the key. So it's very well suited for the purpose. So that in connection with that, we made a lot of editorials in section 3.5. So we hope we've resolved 3 issues here, 125, 115, and 88, also the opportunistic use case. Please have a look on the master branch currently, and then we will, if you are no comments, then we will close those issues. After version 8, we also did some clarifications to be able to close a number of issues, and in particular one where the terminology is changed. We are not using the term null, which may be misunderstood, and using the term nil, which may be used in the CBOR or CDDL context. That's version 8, or that's after version 8. So with that, this was all the changes we've made since last meeting. And I'll get to the next steps, what happens later. But this is, unless there are any further comments, I will just proceed with another point. So we have the, in addition to the specification, there was a request from the people working on formal verification of ad hoc to provide input on what are the intended security levels and design goals of ad hoc. And John has written a short text about that that's currently uploaded to the GitHub, and comments are welcome. Do you want to say anything about this, John?
Yes, sure, and then maybe Malisha can fill in. So I wrote, there was some discussion, there was a request from Kartik, and there was some discussion on the list. I sent some preliminary discussion on the list, and then after thinking a little bit more, I filled in some more detail and I published it as a text format. I hope it fulfills more or less what Kartik wants. The discussion makes a lot of comparison to TLS 1.3, which is a quite similar application layer Sigma-based protocol. And now Malisha has suggested that we should write this up in a more academic paper form or a letter and publish it to a preprint and hopefully also to some somewhere else. Maybe, and that seems like a good idea. Malisha, maybe you want to take over.
Yeah, so this is really a preliminary idea I had while going through the slide deck today. So essentially, I mean, my goal here is to really attract the crypto guys, the formal analysis community to look at the protocol once we declare it as stable. And I think formally publishing this in a letter or in some academic format in a workshop maybe would would help to reach that goal. So, I mean, obviously we can discuss this further. Now the summer break is coming, and then I suppose we could check with Kartik what he thinks about it, because he is our main liaison with this community, and then based on that decide on the next steps.
Okay, sounds good to me. I think that's excellent. This text certainly, well, I mean, could end up in the draft, but I think it's better not kept in the draft. It really has a separate purpose. So instead of filling the draft with this type of information, I think it's excellent if this could be published in some other way. And this is a really good start, I think, and people are welcome to comment, and I suppose join the activity as well if they want to. Isn't that right, John and Malisha? Hello?
You call out my name, but I missed exactly what you said.
So my question: is anyone else invited to do this, or that was my question? To be part of this work.
Oh, I mean, we can discuss this at the interim, I suppose, at the next interim. I think this is completely open. Anyone from the working group who is willing to participate, I think, is more than welcome.
Okay, very good. So
that is my initial, yeah. That is my, yeah. So
if you're interested, join the relevant interim for the discussion.
Yeah,
okay.
So maybe we can form a design team on this or something along those lines. I mean, this is open for discussion.
Good.
And of course, I welcome any proposals on that. Yeah.
Great. Okay, so then move over to the open issues. So here are the open issues as of Monday, I think. I tried to classify them into minor, straightforward issues, the green ones, those which are somewhat independent from the specification, and those which we need at some point to take a decision on. And well, the straightforward, that's straightforward, I suppose. We need to just do it. The blue ones is basically the items where we could publish without solving them, but if there are solutions, then we can add that to the document. And in particular, here we have the test vector issues I mentioned previously in conjunction with Marco's presentation, that we need to, we have a request for JSON test vectors. We have a proposal for a format, but we haven't really completed on that. So that's something we started, but we haven't really completed on. We have basically prioritized the spec instead of making a lot of inputs around test vectors. There is also a issue 47, which has a number of requests on test vectors, which we haven't been able to comply with. That's probably helpful when we have the final specification to have to easily make test your implementation against those. So that's something that's really good, but not strictly necessary for completing the specification. And when it comes to the black, I don't say blacklisted, the black issues here, they are have a separate issue each, a separate slide each. So let's go over to those. So yeah, the first one, this is really something that we'd like to have a technical discussion around. Oh, maybe you want to take this, John. I haven't prepared you for this. Do you want to do that?
Sure, I can take this. I have written these CRs. So this is an issue and a couple of CRs. So the idea here is to simplify the MAC calculation. The MAC is now, and with MAC, it's the MAC in the Sigma protocol, which is later signed. And currently, the MAC is calculated with an AAD. And the idea here is that we simplify the MAC calculation by calculating it with a HMAC. It basically takes away, I think, 1 page or 1.5 from the specification. And it also have other advantages. Right now, the MAC size is tied to the A80 algorithm, even if the encryption and the MAC part of Sigma are quite independent cryptographic operations and properties. And that this tying also means that the MAC is quite small. It's 8 byte or 16 bytes. I think that's fine security-wise, but in the signature case, the MAC could be much larger, like 32 bytes, which is, for example, is in TLS 103. So without any additional overhead, it doesn't cost anything. So the suggestion here is to change the A80 to HMAC using the ad hoc KDF. This allows us to have larger MACs. It seems much simpler in the specification and in implementations, and it also allows us to separate the encryption part from the MAC part. I think there's still there's an issue open, and there's some discussion here. We got some earlier comments. I think it would be very good to get more comments from implementer. I think the cryptographic things are fine, but we would very much like some more new comments from implementer, what is easy to implement here.
Okay, anyone?
Alicia is in the queue. Not. No.
Thank you,
Yes,
Button.
then we can.
I would really like to hear the work group's opinion on this. This seems like a good change based from what I read in the issue description, John, that you made. Maybe you could comment on the point improved security that you make while using the KDF instead of a MAC. How does this play cryptographically?
Yeah, I think practically, I don't think it makes a difference, but you can improve the size. Seems more. You have more margins at least without it costing you anything. Yeah.
So it's more flexibility than security. Is that correct? Or
yeah, I don't think there was a problem with the old construction, but this is clearly, I think, equally secure or more. And it's also much more flexible and simple. So I think this is something we should do. And this is, I think, if everybody agrees, this will be merged in some weeks, and then we can produce new test vectors and have hopefully some interop with this. This is as far as I know, the last current issue that will change test vectors and interop.
okay, sounds good. Steven is saying that it smells like a good change to him, so let's note that. Do we have any other opinions on this?
Then I'm just from an implementation perspective, I think that candidate 2 is a better thing because it means, candidate 1 is a better thing because it means that one less number needs to be kept around, but that's a minor thing.
I think since the slides have been done, I realized that these are only the KDF. That the exporter should probably stay as a byte string because that's like an external interface. But what you say is that you want the KDF to be a sequence rather than an array.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a good input.
Okay. Any
So how do you want? So there is Stephen. Stephen, go ahead.
Yeah, just two things. One is I think this change seems okay, and if it wasn't, I guess we'd find that out in the wash when we do the crypto analysis later on, I guess. Secondly, the other thing I want to say is we're at 15 minutes to go.
Yes, and we have a couple of slides more.
Yeah, I think we
So
should
I
be
think
fine.
we are
Take-
good to go. Yep. Okay. So, Joran, do you have any proposal? How do you want to handle this? Do you want to allow more time for
I think
discussion?
John's
Mhm.
proposal is good. Let's do it.
Mhm.
And I mean, candidate 1 here is a good start. We try that. We put that as an implementation version, and we try out the implementation. Then we get the feedback. So I think that's the right way to go, and we can do that fairly soon, I think.
Sounds good. So that means merging the PR and integrating it with the next version of with the next published version of the draft.
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, great. Let's move on then. So we have time for the next steps. And so there were 2 other issues highlighted as need feedback from the working group, and both of those we don't want to discuss. so that's why I put them last. No, I'm just joking. So this is things that we have discussed for length, and we just want to fix the time when we should finish them off. So this is based on the general question about this issue 103 is based on the general question: what is the right level of message optimization? You can somehow always squeeze in another byte, or at least to some extent. But we are doing a protocol for constrained settings, and we'd like to have small message sizes as well as simple processing, and there is a trade-off there. So, but we do have a target message size, of course, from the requirements work. We derived sizes of the messages from the benchmarks in narrowband IoT, 6-dish and LoRaWAN. This was 2 years ago. There is a more detailed estimate of overhead of 6-dish available from this link, and also it's linked from the issue in the GitHub. And the reason for this discussion now is that the current messages, they comply with the lake requirements, except for one message, which is 1 byte too large. So that's message 2. And we can fix this. For example, we could use node lengths we have the ephemeral key of the responder, and we have the ciphertext in message 2. And those are both individually encoded as CBOR, but there are known lengths. So we could concatenate them and put them into one CBOR bytestring. So that would fix the formally against the lake requirements, but it's not so nice because we sort of go beyond the CBOR. And then the question we've had and we have discussed: should we do this or shouldn't we do this? We do want to comply with the requirements, but looking at the impact here, it wouldn't have any impact on LoRaWAN, no impact on narrowband IoT. And for 6-dish, the particular use case was a 5-node network with 4 hops, and one of those hops, there would be fragmentation. So is it worth it? Maybe. And it doesn't really matter. I don't think it matters a lot whether we do it to change or whether we don't do it. But we still need to have an opinion about this. So in the interim meeting, we agreed that we should revisit the issue, of course, but we wait until we are done with the rest of the messages, so we know exactly what type of trade-offs we are making. I just wanted to confirm that here in the meeting, see if there are any other opinions. Hopefully not. But the floor is open. Any comments on this? Alicia?
The chair hat off, obviously. So yeah, I would just like to comment on the 6-dish use case there. At the time before the Lake working group formation, we were requested to create a use case for Sextish and to come up with those numbers. Those numbers are valid, and now they have been more detailed in this overhead estimator that Joran included in this slide. So I would just like to clarify that the current numbers of ad hoc, the message sizes, do not fit in one particular use case when the initiator, where the ad hoc initiator is the Sextish pledge, the node that is trying to join. If we reverse these roles, I mean, this is better, but still, I think it would be good if we could meet those hard limits that we discussed when the working group was formed, and that we had in the discussions during the adoption process of the draft.
Yeah, thanks, Malisha. I think this is a really good point. I mean, basically, if there is no consensus, if we have a disagreement, then we obviously fall back to the requirements, the hard requirements, and the which we have IETF consensus on. So I think it's easy in that way. I just wanted to highlight this. This is where we are in the process. Any other comments? Okay, so good. We'll get back to this.
Yeah, so maybe just to restate that at the interim meeting, we agreed to park this until the working group last call of the document, and just before launching the working group last call, to have the final discussion, make the decisions whether we do these changes or not.
Right. Okay. Looking at the clock, so we have also another issue of the similar kind, which is the mandatory to implement Cypher Suite, something that's issue number 22. We have discussed it at multiple meetings, at multiple interims. We have a resolution, a potential resolution in the draft, which we thought we were happy with. We closed that. And then there was a question about how did we really motivate this, and that was not documented sufficiently. So we reopened the issue, and John has written a summary. This is done in May, I think this mail, and we have not had any comments so far on this. But the proposal is still that we keep this open. The discussion of MTI we might not be able to find a solution that everyone is perfectly happy with, at least if we are going to select a specific suite. So, but we have a proposal, we keep that open, and unless there are any complaints before working group last call, we just close this issue. And if there are complaints, well, then we probably have to make a vote for if we want to have this formulation or if we want a specific suite.
So yeah, just to note, we don't vote, but the chairs will figure something out if we get to that position.
Ah, okay, yeah, of course, but we will in some way come to preferred answer. Thank you. That's good to hear that we have your support there. Okay, so that's
How many minutes?
Yep. Now, did you want 10 minutes for next steps, or how much did you want?
I think 5 minutes is enough.
5 minutes enough. Okay. So there is actually one issue I should have brought up a little bit earlier, typically. Anyway, so we have the KID 2 as well, the new KID on the block. And this is something we actually also want technical input on. And so the background is that KID is only does only support byte string, which has the property CBOR byte string, which is a nice construct, but it has only one 1-byte value. And we'd like to have more. We think we need more key identifiers with 1-byte values. And CBOR ints has of the order of 50, and this was the original, the reason for the byte string identifier construction, as you remember. And the different solutions to handle this is that we either extend the key identifier to include integer, just as we did for connection identifier. That might be a backward compatibility issue. Or we try to reintroduce the byte string identifier specifically for KID, which is like a step backward. Or that we, as we've done now, define this new COSI header parameter KID2 as byte string integer. And And that's basically the question that we would like to throw out. And maybe we don't have time to discuss this now. Any quick comments? Are you happy with the KID 2? Or should we try any of the other? And while you think of that, whatever we come up to, we will bring to COSI, of course, and try to get their appraisal. And by default, that would be the KID 2.
Yeah, so I propose we move this to, okay, so we have Ben. Ben, do you want to say something quickly?
Yeah, I was just going to say that if we're introducing a new COSI header parameter that acts very similarly to an existing standard one, we should probably at least have a discussion with the COSI working group.
Definitely. I just thought we would have an opinion from Lake point of view before going to COSI.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, so please provide any input on that. Next steps, very quickly, we need to close the Simplify Mac that we can do, resolve the KID 2 discussion. I'll wait for input. We submit the version 09, and unless there is any substantial changes foreseen, that would be the next implementation version, which we think we would like to test in the autumn. Then we need to update test vectors, close minor issues, and more reviews are welcome. Sorry, that leaves you only 4 minutes for next steps, Marisha.
No, that's okay. That's I mean the most important part, anyways. Yeah. So so there was a small discrepancy because Marco in his presentation stated that the 08 version will be implemented in fall for the interrupts. So I guess the we will be waiting for 09 to implement it and then to have interrupt tests. So I guess the timeline we are looking at, because we are right now in the summer break, so we're looking at September, October timeline, I suppose, for the interrupt events. Do we have any approximate date here, both on publishing the 09 and on the interrupt date? Marco, Joran?
I think we hope to get 09 out around the 10th of August, but it depends on the number of users. John, what do you say?
I think Simplify Mac can definitely be done. I guess KID 2 depends a bit on how much comments we get on that. But 10th of August seems reasonable. Yeah.
Okay, and then for the interrupts, Marco, are we looking end of September, end of October? What are your thoughts on this?
In the summer period. But on the good side, I think many things introduced in version 8 already can be done already now in parallel, and maybe should be done to not have too much to do in too little time, especially the new integer by string identifiers would better be done already now as an update.
Okay. So should we then schedule an interim meeting? When would you like to have the next interim meeting then? Should we have one maybe in end of September? Any thoughts on this?
Sounds reasonable.
So end of September, beginning of October. I guess the best would be to catch up on all this after the summer break and then decide. So we also have the pending point about formal analysis, because I would like to issue, as discussed, the formal call to the crypto community and formal analysis groups, academic groups. For that, Kartik from INRIA is a good contact point. So I will take as an action point to reach out to Kartik and see what would be the best way forward to trigger that activity, such that different teams are kind of ready for for the draft to be declared stable by the working group, and then we previously discussed leaving up to 6 months to the different academic teams to provide feedback to the group before we ship the draft to the ISG. Do we have any other comments?
Even had a comment about size of the spec, and yeah, so there is a lot of test vector which doesn't have to be in the text. If we think this page number is an issue, I think we should move out the test vectors to some other stable reference. I don't know what is good to have a GitHub examples. Any input there? Any suggestion?
I'd say we can cover that at the next interim maybe or something. So
yeah, that's just a matter of where to put text. So I agree.
Melissa, then we had one AOB issue that we wanted to touch on. We're at 0 minutes, so maybe now's the time.
Yes. So Rickard, do you want to say a few words about your draft? Literally a couple of sentences. Yes.
Yes, let me say very quickly. Yeah, we had some offline discussions, and we said it may be worth mentioning. There is work on another draft about that is called Key Update for OSCORE, that defines limits for key usage in OSCORE and the fact that you have to rekey after these limits are reached. And it also defines a way to rekey OSCORE that is compatible with the usage of the ad hoc exporter if the original context was created by running ad hoc. So we said that it may be worth mentioning in this draft also during this session and make people aware of its existence, because it relates to rekeying OSCORE and also the usage of the ad hoc exporter. And I can put a link in the chat. Thank you.
Yeah, that would be great. That would be great. We previously had a brief discussion in Lake about the AEAD limits, but this has after that moved to core. So it's really good to see this follow up. Yes, so we are already 2 minutes past the hour. I really apologize for being late. With this, I would like to conclude the meeting. We will be scheduling a meeting for beginning of October or end of September as an interim meeting of the working group. And with that, I'll let you go. Thank you so much for attending, and let's keep up the discussions on GitHub.
great. Thanks all.
Bye-bye.
Okay, so Melissa, if you want to polish the minutes and send them, that's fine. Otherwise, I can do it, but it'll be tomorrow.
Yeah, so I won't do them tonight, but tomorrow, yeah, I'm on Monday. From Monday, I'm on PTO, but I will try to get them done by tomorrow. Otherwise, they're gonna wait.
Well, I can do them tomorrow either. If you're wrapping other stuff up, I have time. So
No worries. It's on me. It's on me.
on you, great. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, they seem really good, the minutes. So that was Marco, I suppose, who was taking it.
Marco and Robin, yeah, that's great.
Oh yes,
Thanks,
thank you so much, guys.
All right, and with that, I'm going to go to the pub.
All right, enjoy.
Slow down, Stephen. See you soon. Bye, folks.